over 16 years of project management experience in one video. Let's get going. So let's set the context, okay? Over the last 16 years, I have worked across multiple projects in multiple countries, across multiple sectors. So you can check my LinkedIn profile for the details. Construction, IT, mechanical, public works, healthcare, you name it. And if there is one question I get asked more often than any other, it's this: what actually makes someone a good project manager? Or can one be successful in project management without any previous work experience? Now, here is the thing. Most professionals think that it comes down to working for big organizations, having certifications, or knowing every process of project management by heart, or being brilliant with Gantt charts or RACI matrices, right? However, after 16 years and dozens of projects in dozens of roles, I can confidently tell you that it's not where the real difference lies between a great project manager and a sort of okayish project manager, okay? So in this video, I'm going to break down 5 things I have learned, sometimes the obvious way, sometimes the hard way, that separate the project managers who genuinely succeed from the ones who just keeps on fumbling, okay? So if you are currently working as a project manager or you are aspiring to become one, this is going to help you understand exactly what it takes to succeed. So let's get started. So let's start with the first thing, and honestly, this is the one that surprises professionals the most: communication over process. Now, when I started out in project management, I genuinely believed that the job was about mastering the framework, the templates, the RAID logs, the RACI charts, the perfect status reports, etc. And don't get me wrong, those things do matter, okay? But here is the thing. In my experience, the projects that failed rarely failed because someone missed a process or a step, okay? And certainly they didn't fail because the PM did not draw up a Gantt chart. They failed because someone wasn't told something important at the right time and in the right way. See, a stakeholder doesn't care about your critical path calculation and what fancy dashboards you have as a PM. They care about whether you can tell them clearly and honestly what's happening, what's at risk, and what you need from them. That's a completely different skill, right? And it's the one that no template could teach you. I remember early in my career, I started off as a project engineer, okay? And there was a fault in design which was communicated to the client on time, which saved us about $100,000 and a lot of rework on top. I mean, that skill mattered far more that day than any documentation or risk reports I could have prepared. Make sense? So if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this: invest as much time as you can in how you communicate what you are delivering to your stakeholders. Because a good plan, poorly communicated, will still fail, right? Now, building this kind of well-rounded project management capability isn't just about picking up one skill in isolation. It's about developing genuine mastery across the fundamentals. And that is exactly why I have created my Project Management Basics course for project managers on Udemy. It's designed for professionals who want to build a strong, practical foundation, whether you are new to the field or looking to formalize the skills you have picked up on the job in the domain of project management. The course also counts towards 16 PDUs or CPDs if you are already certified and you are working through your renewal cycle. So that's the first thing, right? Communication over process. But there is something else I have learned that's arguably even harder to master, especially when things do not go as per plan. So the second thing I have learned, and this one took me years to actually get comfortable with, is this. Good project managers are comfortable with ambiguity and chaos. Now, when you are studying for a certification or you are reading a project management textbook, everything looks neat and in order, right? You define the scope, you build a plan, you execute against it. Picture perfect. However, on the other side of the spectrum, real projects almost never behave that way. Requirements shift, stakeholders change their minds, a supplier might miss a delivery date for reasons entirely out of your control, and suddenly the plan you spent weeks building needs to flex, adapt, and evolve. So here is the thing, the project managers who struggle the most aren't the ones who lack technical knowledge, They are the ones who sort of become uncomfortable when the picture isn't complete. These kind of project managers, they wait for more information, more certainty, more sign-offs before making a single call. It's like they say that I will wait for all the signals to turn green before I start driving my car, And in the meantime, the project stalls and stakeholders suffer. Now, in my experience, I saw this constantly during my time managing transformation projects, So in these kind of projects, you rarely have the luxury of full clarity. You have to make a reasonable, well-informed decision with maybe 70% of the information you wanted and adjust as more information comes in, right? In fact, interestingly, there is a term in project management that exactly defines this, and it's called role wave planning or progressive elaboration. If you are not aware of these terms, please Google it and you will understand what I'm talking about. So the skill isn't eliminating ambiguity, It's developing the judgment to act sensibly within the realms of ambiguity. And that's what separates the project managers who keeps their projects moving in times of uncertainty from those who sort of stalls their project in excuse of enough information or data. Now, once you are comfortable making decisions under uncertainty, the next challenge is what you do when those decisions don't work out in your favor. And that brings me to something which I think is the most underrated skill of all in project management. So the third thing, and this is the one I feel most strongly about, is ownership and accountability. And this is where the RACI model becomes so important, right? Not just as a document you will fill in once and you sort of file it away, but as something you actively manage throughout the project. Now, here is where I think a lot of project managers, even experienced ones, get it wrong, They assume that if something isn't going well, it automatically becomes their problem or their team's problem to fix. However, that's not what accountability actually means, And interestingly, the concept of RACI exists precisely to prevent that. Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Each of those roles carries a distinct obligation, and it's not all sitting with the project manager or with the delivery team, So don't ever feel the burden that everything is on you, since you are the project manager, fortunately or unfortunately, because that is not true. See, if a stakeholder is marked as accountable for a decision, or let's say a specific business owner is responsible for delivering an input, then it's their job to deliver it, full stop. And they should be doing their job, right? And your job as a project manager is to make that crystal clear at the outset and then hold people accountable to it professionally and consistently. For example, when let's say a deliverable slips because a third-party function hasn't provided you what they committed that they will provide you, the base plan should not be to absorb that delay quietly and just start to find a workaround. Because if you think about it, firstly, it's not sustainable, and secondly, it's not fair on your core project team either. Make sense? In fact, you as the project manager should start making the accountable team's life difficult if they have been unable to deliver things to you or your team on time. Then you are truly a servant leader and you are fighting for your team. So a good project manager isn't someone who simply protects everyone else from consequences, okay? It is someone who uses the RACI framework to keep every party genuinely accountable for their piece of the puzzle. Please keep that in mind. Now, once accountability is clearly assigned, the next question becomes how you actually lead the people who report into you day in and day out. And that's where the fourth skill comes in. And that skill is servant leadership, not command and control. And this took me a while to unlearn because early on I thought that managing a project meant managing every task yourself which your team members are working on, okay? And I was horribly wrong. So here is the thing. The best project managers I have worked alongside spent far more time removing obstacles for their teams than working on the tasks for them, right? I mean, your job isn't to micromanage how someone writes a code or drafts a design or charters a project, okay? Your job is to ensure that you have the right people with the right skills in the right position. And you also have to ensure that these people have what they need to do their tasks well. However, on the other side of the spectrum, servant leadership doesn't also mean that being passive and you move on to complete delegation without oversight, okay? It means actively clearing blockers, shielding the team from unnecessary noise, and making decisions so that they can focus on the delivery. Make sense? So leadership here is measured by what your team achieves, okay? Not by how much control you hold on your team. And that brings us to the final thing, which sort of ties everything together. So here comes my final learning. Hire the right people and please get out of their way. Ever wondered why the hiring process for the best companies of the world, such as Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta, is so difficult? This is the exact reason. If you bring in the right person with the right skill, with the right capability, just as importantly with the right ethical values, most of your tasks are taken care of in autopilot. You don't need to police their work. You don't need to check their work, chase for their work, because they take ownership of it themselves, right? And interestingly, this doesn't just apply to your core project team. It applies equally to suppliers, where selecting a supplier isn't just about cost or capacity, right? It should always be about whether they had the technical competence and frankly the integrity to deliver what they promised to deliver without you have to chasing them again and again. So when you get the hiring and the selection decisions right in your project, whether that's your own team or your supply chain, everything downstream becomes so easy, okay? Communication improves, accountability improves, even ambiguity becomes easier to navigate because now you can trust the people around the table. And to be honest, even after 1.5 decades of project management career, if there is that one skill I am still learning, it's this, okay? Hire right and get the out of their way. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please press the like button and I'll see you again in the next one.